Anzhi, who was reborn, had a one-night relationship with others. He didn't think this was a bond in his life. In his new life, he made money by working as a copywriter and embarked on a journey of traveling around the world. Until the end of his 3-year journey, he returned to the place where his rebirth began, preparing to open a bookstore and embrace a new life. However, 2.5 years ago, Zhang Suxin, a young singer who retired from the music industry, suddenly came to the door with her 2-year-old daughter. His life suddenly took a new turn and unfolded. So a copy of the article was published in a bookstore, raising children and occasionally helping retired diva, who had become an independent musician, write songs and enjoy life endlessly. Keywords of the novel. The days when I retired with the music queen without a pop-up window, the days when I retired with the music queen. Download the full text, and the latest chapters on the days when I retired with the music queen. Chapter 1. Strange Telephone. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. Strange Telephone. Anzhi walked out of the subway station in Jinzhou district, Haidu, and took a deep breath. After 3 years, he finally returned. 3 years ago, he traveled through this world without any worries, starting from this city and embarking on a life of traveling while copying novels. With the royalties earned from writing novels, he traveled to every continent of the world and experienced the customs and traditions of different regions around the world. This is the journey he has always dreamed of in his past life. But at that time, the world was far away and there was no money to buy a knife. After crossing over, he was able to fulfill this dream by writing a past life novel that he had never had in this world. Of course, a 3-year journey is not enough to make his footsteps cover every inch of the world. There are still many landscapes that he didn't have time to appreciate. But even if life is a journey, one must stop and take a break, right? So he returned to the place where the journey began, ready to rest here for a while and do some other things. A string of bells rang. Anzhi took out his phone and a call came in, with the note from the seller. He answered the call and held his phone to his ear. Hello, I am the owner of a store on Jiuan Road. I would like to confirm with you. Are you sure you are interested in buying my store? I'm sure, didn't we already communicate before? Well, I just wanted to confirm. When can you come over and take a look at the store? Is tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock okay? Okay, tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, I'll wait for you at the store. Hanging up the phone, Anzhi took a taxi with a backpack on his back and went to Jiuan Road to stay at a hotel. After 3 years of writing, he seized the trend of the times and published several books based on the trend, earning a lot of money. 2 of the books also sold their copyrights, leaving him with a large surplus after deducting his living and travel expenses. So he returned to Haidu, stopped and planned to use the remaining money to open a bookstore. The sea capital of this world, housing prices have not yet taken off. He now has enough money to buy a street-facing shop and renovate it to open a shop. This is also something he has always wanted to do in his past life dreams. But with the advent of the internet era, how can physical bookstores be so easy to open? He doesn't want to sell teaching aids. Life and economic conditions are not as romantic, and he is not allowed to do these capricious things. But this life is different, he has money. Anzhi has already decided on the name of the bookstore, and he plans to call it Sanwei Bookstore. The reliance on past life in this name is self-evident, but no one in this world will understand. In front of the Jiuan Hotel on Jiuan Road, Anzhi paid to get off. Looking at the hotel that has been renovated after 3 years, a feeling of change swept over Anzhi's heart. My predecessor was an orphan. 3 years ago, when Anzhi crossed over, his predecessor had just graduated from college and as an adult, he could not return to live in an orphanage. My predecessor with mediocre grades found a job as a waiter at the Jiuan Hotel. One night, he accidentally fainted, and Anzhi crossed over. Afterwards, Anzhi took advantage of his spare time to write his first novel, Resigned, and began his journey. Now 3 years have passed, from the starting point back to the starting point, let's stay here. He went into the hotel and booked a room. The front desk and waiters in the hotel had already been replaced, and there was no one he could recognize. After receiving the room card, he was lost in thought for a moment. The room number marked on the room card is 8808. 3 years ago, while escorting a drunken female guest back to her room, her predecessor was knocked down by the guest and accidentally hit her head, resulting in a coma and a GG. I crossed over by myself and vaguely wanted to get up and leave, but was forcibly pulled by the female guest. Feeling dizzy and hesitant, she fell in love with the female guest for an overnight. In my impression, the female guest seemed very beautiful. But he had just traveled through time and his mind was not very clear, so he couldn't remember clearly. When she woke up the next day, the female guest had already left. He was also deducted 1 day's salary and a bed sheet for absenteeism. What a coincidence, it's 8808 again. However, the room has been renovated and has become completely unfamiliar to him. There is nothing worth remembering either. The sky is gradually getting dark. He put down his luggage, prepared to go out and find a place to have a casual dinner, and then came back to sleep. Tomorrow, he will talk about the shop. Just as he was about to leave, his phone rang again. When I took out my phone, it turned out to be an unfamiliar number. Anzhi thought for a moment and answered the phone. Hello, is this Mr. Anzhi? On the phone, there was a beautiful woman's voice, speaking with a touch of politeness and nervousness. Anzhi said, it's me. May I ask who you are? On the phone, a slight and gentle exhalation was heard, and the woman breathed a sigh of relief and said, very presumptuous. May I ask where you are? I would like to see you once. No self-introduction. Anzhi frowned and asked, what's up? The woman said, it's not convenient to talk on the phone, can we meet and discuss in detail? The tone sounded very sincere, not like it was a scam. But who stipulates that those who engage in fraud cannot act emotionally? After thinking for a moment, Anzhi said, I'm on Jiuan Road in Haidu and I'm about to go out for dinner. If you really have something to talk to me about, come over to Jiuan Hotel. I'll call you after I find a restaurant. Well, good. Coincidentally, I'm also on Jiuan Road. I'll be waiting for your call. The woman said sincerely. Anzhi hung up the phone, feeling a bit confused. Those who engage in telecommunications fraud will not meet themselves in reality. If it weren't for telecom fraud, who would it be? Can the editor under the maple tree reveal my information to someone else? It shouldn't be possible. After 3 years of cooperation, Anzhi can still trust the professional ethics of the editor over there. Unable to think about it, Anzhi decided not to think about it and left the room to leave the hotel. He chose a nearby popular small restaurant and went in to find a corner to sit down. No matter who the other person is, it's always difficult to make any decisions in such a bustling place. With this thought in mind, Anzhi called the other person back and said, I'm at the Su family homestyle restaurant east of the Jiuan Hotel. In the corner by the window, I'm wearing a white sports T-shirt. The other party replied, good, and quickly hung up the phone. Anzhi ordered 2 cups of tea and waited for each other. After a while, 2 figures, one big and one small, sat down opposite him. Anzhi lifted his head and was stunned for a moment. On the other side is a woman in a black long dress, with a slender figure and exposed lotus arm skin that looks like condensed fat. She had long hair draped over her shoulders and was wearing a mask, covering half of her face. However, her fair and smooth forehead and large, sparkling eyes still showed her breathtaking beauty. Beside her, a tiny little girl stood tightly against her, blinking her big eyes curiously as she looked at Anzhi. Anzhi was a bit confused. How does this woman and little girl, big and small, give themselves a sense of familiarity? End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Is he a dad? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Is he a dad? May I ask who you are? Anzhi asked this question again. His gaze lingered on the woman and the little girl. Especially on the little girl, the feeling of intimacy to the extreme was so clear that he had the urge to hold her up and hold her high. But this little girl is indeed too cute. A slightly round face with white and pure protein, big eyes that reveal a rare innocence and cuteness for adults, a small and delicate nose, and small lips. There are also 2 slightly raised braids. So delicate and lovely, who wouldn't want to tease her? The woman took a deep breath and said, Mr. Luan, 3 years ago, you worked as a waiter at the Joan Hotel, didn't you? Anzhi nodded and said, yes. He suddenly thought of something, his expression slightly stunned. The woman pursed her red lips under her mask, as if struggling with how to speak. After hesitating for a while, she said, one night 3 years ago, I was participating in an event at the Joan Hotel and got drunk. A waiter helped me back to my room, but I accidentally knocked me down and knocked my head. Anzhi widened his eyes slightly and said, is it really you? The woman's expression was somewhat unnatural, she nodded and said, it's me. At one moment, Luan didn't know what to say. He fell silent for a while and said, I'm sorry, 3 years ago. Just as he spoke, the woman interrupted him and said, it wasn't your fault 3 years ago. Anzhi closed his mouth. On this topic, women have no intention of saying more. He didn't continue the question wisely and looked at the little girl next to him, so. He didn't know how to speak for a moment. The little girl looked at Anzhi and then at the woman, and asked, is he a father? The woman stared fixedly at Anzhi without answering. But Anzhi already knows the answer. No wonder this little girl gives herself a sense of familiarity. When I wake up every day to wash up and look in the mirror, I already see more of myself. This little girl bears a striking resemblance to herself. Yes, I am. A sudden impulse arose, and he unconsciously blurted out to the little girl. The woman finally breathed a sigh of relief and spoke again, her name is Xian. She's 2 years, 2 months, and 8 days old. She can't speak very clearly. This is reporting information about the child to oneself, making oneself confident. Luan's emotions were chaotic and he was at a loss for a moment. He never thought that, in good condition, he would be reborn and have a child. But the warmth and affection that emanated from my heart were so genuine. His thoughts were mixed and he didn't know how to face them. Listening to the woman's words, he instinctively answered, it's already very good, speaking so fluently. The woman said, that's because she has been brewing this sentence countless times. As she spoke, she took out a pink envelope from the bag she was carrying and handed it to Anzhi. Anzhi reached out to take it and saw a small cow painted on the cover book, along with a line of gilded text. Birth medical certificate. This is the protective cover for the birth certificate. Is fiber belonging to cattle? As Anzhi asked, he opened the protective cover. The woman's answer rang in her ear, yes. The birth certificate bears the child's name, which is Zhang Suxin. The date of year, month, and day can match the dates spoken by women. The year 3 years ago was the year of the rat, and Xian should have been born in the 2nd year, which was the year of the ox. The father's column is empty, while the mother's column is written with the words Zhang Suxin. Zhang Suxin. Anzhi looked up in shock and looked at the woman. Zhang Suxin, this familiar name. Even Anzhi, who has been reborn, is very familiar with it. 3 years ago, this name was still an active diva in the music industry. This little diva reached her peak in her debut and made a stunning debut with her album. Although she is not very old, her 3 albums are enough to make her stand at the top of the music industry. Among the songs that Anzhi often listens to, there are many songs by Zhang Suxin. 3 years ago, Zhang Suxin attended a banquet event at the Joan Hotel. Then one day 2.5 years ago, he suddenly retired. You. He couldn't help but spit out a word, but looked at the bustling small restaurant and didn't finish speaking. But in his heart, a storm had already stirred up. Is the woman from 3 years ago Zhang Suxin? Is it Zhang Suxin, the former queen of the music industry, who fell in love with him overnight? So, 2.5 years ago, Zhang Suxin retired because she was pregnant with Xian. Is the woman across from me wearing a mask now because she is Zhang Suxin? This is not important. Zhang Suxin lowered her eyes and said. Lu Anzhi took a deep breath, nodded steadily, and said, yes, it's not important. Now what's important is Xian, the queen of the music industry, Zhang Suxin, just an identity. But being slender is the most important thing. He carefully reviewed the content on the birth certificate again, then closed it and returned it to Zhang Suxin. I want to be angry with Dad. I want to be angry with Dad. The little girl suddenly scratched the edge of the table and called out. Zhang Suxin showed a slightly helpless expression, but obviously not at ease. She let her daughter run to a person who had only seen two sides, gently picked up the little girl, and advised, be good, Mom and Dad are talking about things. After we finish speaking, will you go to Dad's side again? Okay, she said, blinking her agile eyes. The sound of okay was very clear, without any emotions of grievance, and the answer was simple, serious, and obedient. Lu Anzhi felt like he was instantly transformed. The little girl was very curious about Lu Anzhi, blinking her big eyes and staring at him closely. Lu Anzhi smiled at Xian and then said to Zhang Suxin, where did you get my phone number? Zhang Suxin said, I asked an acquaintance about the Jiuan Hotel, checked the photos and information of the waiters 3 years ago, and found you. Lu Anzhi nodded. Zhang Suxin naturally has the ability to achieve this. However, whether it is asking the hotel to disclose information or the hotel disclosing information to people, it is theoretically inappropriate. But Lu Anzhi has no intention of pursuing this now. He listened as Zhang Suxin continued, I had planned not to contact you for the rest of my life. But as Xian grew up, when playing with other children, they often had their fathers with them. She kept asking me about my dad. She kept asking me, and it was only then that I realized my thoughts were too simple. Even if I could take care of the child alone, the child still needed a father. So I tried to come find you, wanting to see if you have any ideas and if you are suitable for being a father for children. Lu Anzhi understood the underlying lines in Zhang Suxin's words and said straightforwardly, so, I can't do it yet. I need your approval to become a delicate father, right? Zhang Suxin said, I'm sorry. Lu Anzhi smiled and shook his head, saying, there's no need to apologize, it's right. You're taking responsibility for the child, that's good. Zhang Suxin felt a little relieved and smiled slightly, it's good if you can understand. So, if possible, I hope you can take some time off in the coming period to take care of Xian. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. The years when I was a copywriter. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. The years when I was a copywriter. Lu Anzhi looked solemnly at Xian and saw the little girl blinking her big eyes at him. She nodded and said, okay. Zhang Suxin looked at the delicate watch between her wrists and said, it's getting late. I should take my child back. I'll have to make some milk powder for her to drink later. Are you free tomorrow morning? If you're free tomorrow morning, I'll bring the child over. Lu Anzhi asked, do you want to leave after finishing your meal? Zhang Suxin said, no, I'll go home and eat. I can't take off my mask here. Lu Anzhi nodded and said, tomorrow at 9 o'clock, I will go to a Jiuan Qin store on Jiuan Road to see a store. That store is not going to open, I plan to buy it and open it as a bookstore. Zhang Suxin was surprised and said, open a bookstore. 3 years ago, Lu Anzhi was still working as a waiter, and Zhang Suxin only thought that Lu Anzhi was still working there, without considering how good the economic conditions would be for Lu Anzhi. She doesn't mind this either. She only focuses on whether Lu Anzhi will be good for the child. But 3 years ago, the waiter suddenly said that he now has the means to buy a storefront and open a bookstore. Zhang Suxin couldn't help but feel a little surprised. Lu Anzhi nodded and said, "In the past 3 years, I have written a few books and made a little money. It's just enough to buy a shop and open one." Zhang Suxin was even more surprised. "I usually enjoy reading books in my spare time." "What did you write?" "I don't know if I have read it. The Way of Luan, the biography of the Holy Spirit, the legend of Wukong, and the Dragon Clan. When he was born again, it was at a time when youth literature was flourishing. However, online literature has just emerged and has not yet developed websites like Starting Point. Nowadays, the most popular novel websites online are still those that operate primarily through the transformation of the internet into physical entities. 3 years ago, after determining the trend, Lu Anzhi's first work that flashed through his mind was the once popular City of Illusion. Then he wrote the original template for City of Fantasy, and Ant Clamp's manga, The Legend, in the form of a novel. Of course, the brushstrokes still follow the style of Fantasy City, filled with a lot of gorgeous and melancholic language that can make people look up at the sky 45 degrees. The fact proves that this set was really popular 3 years ago. His fame immediately spread and he earned his first sum of money that was enough to make him resign and embark on a journey with peace of mind. So he continued to work hard and wrote The Legend of Wukong. This book full of second-tier atmosphere has once again become popular, and the phenomenon that appeared in the past life has also appeared in this world. After reading books, young boys and girls who are in their second year of middle school will always have feelings and change their signature on the chat app Qiuqiu to the words in Wukong Zhuan at some point. Such as, "I want this day to no longer cover my eyes, if I become a Buddha, there will be no demons in the world. If I become a demon, how can I be Buddha? I have come, loved, fought, and I don't care about the outcome," and so on. These 2 books were written in the first year. Starting from the second year, after noticing a slight shift in popular trends, he wrote The Dragon Clan, which made him even more popular, and became a prolific author known for his penchant for wielding knives. The world has not yet had Harry Potter, so the Hidden Castle Academy in Dragon Slayer in the modern context are even more novel to people. However, Lu Mingfei, a weak child, can still resonate with many readers like in his past life. Nowadays, the sales of the first and second parts of Dragon Clan are steadily increasing, and the animation rights of Legend of the Condor and the movie rights of Wukong have been sold out. The third part of Dragon Clan is also about to be completed. There is no Ultraman in this world. When writing about the story that happened in the Sakura country, he had to change the phrase, "We are all little monsters, and one day we will be killed by the righteous Ultraman," that was destined to become the signature quote of Autumn to, "One day we will be killed by the righteous hero." When the third installment of Dragon Clan is released, he has no intention of writing this series. Anyway, if you've earned enough money, the rest of it will also be criticized. Both sides are being sprayed, so it's better not to expend this effort. Anyway, he has already become a dog author. Isn't he popular when it comes to making money from a different book? So, are you Doraemon, the author of Dragon Clan? Zhang Suxin across from her suddenly had some emotional fluctuations and looked at Lu Anzhi with unfriendly eyes. Doraemon is the pen name of Lu Anzhi. Doraemon's pocket in his past life could retrieve various technological items from the future, while in his current mind, he can also recall countless cultural products from his past life with such clear memories. So he gave himself this pen name. Luan Ji Dao. Do you also watch Dragon Clan? Zhang Suxin said softly, "I said I also read books and relax in my daily life." Why did you write Xiaomi to death? Lu Anzhi. Seeing Zhang Suxin staring at her intently, Luan leaned back slightly, took a sip of tea, and said, "Sometimes, the characters in her works are always beyond the author's control, making their own choices and following their own destiny. This is something that cannot be done. Zhang Suxin stared at Lu Anzhi several times before finally giving up, letting Lu Anzhi breathe a sigh of relief. If you don't mind, tomorrow at 9 o'clock, I will also take Xian to the Jiuan Qin Company. Do you think it's okay? Zhang Suxin said. Lu Anzhi said, what's not allowed here? Looking at the affectionate little girl in front of him, Lu Anzhi even wanted to hug and sleep tonight. But considering that Zhang Suxin would definitely not agree, he didn't casually ask for anything. Okay, I'll come over tomorrow. Zhang Suxin said, touching her delicate little head, fine, say goodbye to Dad. As a result, Xiaoxian blinked her big eyes twice, opened her two small arms, and said, Dad, hold on. Lu Anzhi suddenly felt his heart melt and couldn't help but smile. He glanced at Zhang Suxin and found that she was also looking at him. At that moment, the two of them had a telepathic connection. After this exchange, Zhang Suxin finally let go of some of her guard against Lu Anzhi. Although she couldn't directly hand over the fibers to Lu Anzhi, she watched on her own and let Lu Anzhi hug the child, and there was no problem. Zhang Suxin lifted the slender fibers from the table, and Lu Anzhi took them carefully, as if afraid of throwing the little girl. The little girl was carrying baby fat, her arms and legs were plump, and her hands were slightly heavy. Lu Anzhi held Xian in his arms and smiled at Zhang Suxin, it's strange and heavy. You're not weak. Zhang Suxin said, I've raised her from childhood to adulthood, and the muscles in her arms are almost being trained. Lu Anzhi looked at Zhang Suxin's smooth and fair arms and said, I can't tell. Zhang Suxin didn't speak. Her face was still a bit unpleasant, as if she was still blaming Lu Anzhi for writing about Xiaomi's death. But Xiaoxian doesn't care about the atmosphere between adults. As soon as she was carried into Lu Anzhi's arms, she laughed, hee, like a little fool. That little hand was gripping Lu Anzhi's arm, the flesh was plump and warm, making people feel strange and comfortable. Oh, wood. The little girl suddenly gave Lu Anzhi a kiss on the cheek. Lu Anzhi was slightly taken aback. Then the little girl tilted her head back slightly and said, oh my, Hu Ji. Lu Anzhi touched his cheek and couldn't help but laugh. He has just returned from a trip and hasn't had a chance to shave yet. I just had a hard beard that didn't grow much, so I pricked the little girl. Does it hurt or not? He asked about the fibrous passage. Unconsciously, he felt his voice becoming coquettish when talking to the little girl. Xian shook her head and said, it doesn't hurt. Lu Anzhi smiled and rubbed his delicate head. Afterwards, Xian was carried back by Zhang Suxin. Xiaoxian still feels a bit reluctant. And Lu Anzhi couldn't help but feel the same emotions as Xiaoxian. Say goodbye to Dad. Zhang Suxin shook her delicate little hand and said. Goodbye. Xiaoxian said, placing her hand on her mouth and giving one of Luan's kisses, would. Lu Anzhi laughed again unconsciously and asked Zhang Suxin, did you teach me? Zhang Suxin shook her head and said, no. She doesn't know where she learned it from. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Starting from considering daughter, you are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. Starting from considering daughter, watching Zhang Suxin walk out of the restaurant holding Xian, Lu Anzhi was dazed for a while. After 3 years of rebirth and returning from a trip, he suddenly had a daughter. This kind of thing is even more mystical than rebirth. But both in terms of time and appearance, this matter really can't be more true. I didn't expect such a turning point in my life after 3 years of returning. It's really unbelievable. But the feeling of holding the little girl in my arms just now is so beautiful and genuine. It cannot be done falsely. How should one face this new change on their own? Sir, may I order now? The voice of the restaurant waiter interrupted Lu Anzhi's thoughts. Lu Anzhi regained his senses and ordered a very ordinary bowl of noodles. After eating hastily, I returned to the Jiuan Hotel. He took out his laptop from his luggage. The notebook is very heavy and annoying. But there is no other way, the technological development in this world has not yet ushered in thin and lightweight laptops. For 3 years, Anzhi has been able to travel around with thick and overweight laptops, waiting for the upgrade of the laptop industry. Actually, this is tolerable. The most fatal thing is that the lack of intelligent pinyin input method made uncomfortable at one point. The traditional pinyin input method in this world is similar to the previous intelligent ABC, which is not smooth to use and seriously slows down its typing speed. Forced and helpless, Anzhi once wanted to learn Wubi, but found out that this world didn't even have Wubi. So he took the trouble to send emails to major internet technology companies to put forward various suggestions on intelligent pinyin input methods, and all of them were lost without exception. Now, it's time to code again, and I have to endure the torment of input methods. Connect the power, turn on the computer, and open the document. The name of the document is Black Moon Tide. The progress has reached the point where the knife is sent to Yusuji Yoshiyuki. Anzhi placed his hand on the keyboard, but suddenly became restless and unable to tap his fingers. Although those words were so clear in his mind, as if the memories of his passing were deeply engraved in the depths of his memory in the past world, why was he unable to type the keyboard? In his mind, everything is delicate. The little girl who stood up to her and was stabbed by her own beard. Anzhi unconsciously created a new document and opened it, finally landing his finger on the keyboard. Generate brand new text in the document. Little Prince. Then Anzhi stopped between his fingers and laughed. The little prince, for Xian, she still can't understand it, right? Forget it, since the length is not long, let's write it out first. Then write a few other fairy tales, such as, 3 Little Pigs, Ugly Duckling, Magic Pen Maoyang, Little Horse Crossing the River, and so on. But if all of these were just text, probably Xian wouldn't be interested, right? After all, the little girl is only over 2 years old. Anyway, let's get these codes out first. Who makes themselves only want to code these things now? Code it out and show it to the editor under the maple tree. If possible, hire a good fairy tale painter to provide pictures and books, and then show it to Xian. As for the knife for painting pear clothes, sooner or later, it can be sent later. The Little Prince has tens of thousands of words, and even if it's just taken out of his mind, one of Luan can't finish it at night. He really wants to have a magic pen that he can move on his own in Harry Potter. Unfortunately, he was reborn for 3 years and did not discover the existence of wizards in this world. Close the computer at the designated time to rest. The next day, after washing up, Anzhi had breakfast directly at the hotel and saw that it was almost time. He went out to the shop that he had been looking for online. Before going out, he shaved his beard clean. The Jiuanchin Company is located at the end of Jiuan Road, at a corner. The location is not very good, no wonder the piano shop cannot continue. However, Anzhi did not originally expect to make money by opening a store, so it doesn't matter whether the location is good or not. At the entrance of the piano shop, Zhang Suxin and Xian had not yet arrived, and Anzhi couldn't help but feel a bit disappointed. He entered the piano company alone. The things in the piano shop have been basically cleaned up, leaving only one piano that has not been moved yet. There is someone waiting inside early. Seeing Anzhi enter the door, he greeted him and said, "Hello, was it on the phone yesterday?" Anzhi nodded and said, "It's me." The person said, "I am the owner of this shop. I came over early in the morning and waited. Do you want to take a look first?" Luan nodded and said, "Okay." The person then took Luan around. This shop has a considerable area, consisting of 2 floors, each of which is over 200 square meters in size. The first floor space is spacious, used for shops. The second floor is divided into many independent rooms, with complete bathrooms, making it a perfect place for living and living. Anzhi has already seen these places through photos online, but seeing them in person gives a completely different feeling. How about it? Is it okay? I urgently need money to turn over, otherwise I wouldn't choose to sell the store directly. It's also good to rent it out. The landlord led Lu Anzhi to see the second floor and said, I didn't originally plan to sell it. I only made water and electricity, laid tiles, painted walls, and installed cabinets here. I have another place to live, but I haven't lived here since, and it's still new inside. And it's a very minimalist and atmospheric style, which I specifically designed for someone. But if you insist on buying both the upper and lower floors together, I will reluctantly give up. The decoration on the second floor will be treated as a gift to you. Lu Anzhi has looked at each room on the second floor one by one, and as the owner said, it has a very simple and atmospheric style. The light-colored flooring runs through, and the walls are simple large white walls. The dark and simple cabinets create a harmonious contrast with the walls, coupled with carefully selected, minimalist and fashionable lights, making them timeless even in their past lives. He nodded in satisfaction. If it were before, he wouldn't need to think too much. But the appearance of Zhang Suxin and Xiao Xianxian forced him to consider every issue related to Xianxian. For example, harmful substances such as formaldehyde and benzene that may be caused by house decoration and have a significant impact on children's health. If the second floor decoration is satisfactory enough, it will save him a lot of trouble. The phone's built-in ringtone rings. Luan saw that it was indeed Zhang Suxin calling. I answered the phone and told Zhang Suxin that she was on the second floor of Jiuanqin Company. In no time, Zhang Suxin slowly walked upstairs, holding her slender little hand. The little girl groaned up the stairs with her little hand that was not held by Zhang Suxin. Zhang Suxin is still wearing a mask. She said helplessly to Lu Anzhi, she insists on going upstairs on her own. It's better for children to be lively, said Lu Anzhi with a smile. The little girl heard Lu Anzhi's voice, her eyes lit up, and she looked at Lu Anzhi. She stepped onto the last staircase and immediately released Zhang Suxin's hand, running happily towards Lu Anzhi and shouting, Dad. Lu Anzhi crouched down to catch the delicate fibers. The landlord sighed, are these your lover and daughter? They are both so beautiful. Xiaoxiangxian chuckled. Zhang Suxin's expression suddenly became unnatural, but she did not refute it. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Small requirements for fibers. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Small requirements for fibers. Lu Anzhi smiled. Zhang Suxin, like him, was not prepared to face this relationship. He is Xianxian's father, and Zhang Suxin is Xianxian's mother, but he and Zhang Suxin are only acquaintances now, not much different from strangers. So Lu Anzhi didn't answer the homeowner's question and said, let's continue looking at the house. He casually picked up Xianxian and asked with a smile, see if Dad's beard is tied today. Xianxian touched Lu Anzhi's cheek with her two small hands in his arms and said with a smile, no pricking. Then gave him a kiss. The homeowner couldn't help but say, your daughter is so cute. Lu Anzhi smiled and said, well, I think so too. He put down his fibers and continued to look at the house. Zhang Suxin came over and grabbed the delicate fibers. The little girl was very curious about this new place and pulled Zhang Suxin to follow behind Luan, looking left and right, constantly asking some very common questions. Zhang Suxin answered her gently and tirelessly beside her. What is that? That's the window. Window table. It's the window. It's the window table. The window. What is that? That's a cabinet. Cabinet table. What is that? It's a toilet. Mom pees. Both Lu Anzhi and the homeowner couldn't help but turn around. Zhang Suxin smiled awkwardly and said, our home is a smart toilet. Recently, Xianxian has learned to press the remote control's flush button, and every time she flushes the toilet, she has to compete to flush it. She wants to flush. The little girl was unaware that she had caused a slightly awkward situation and was still looking for the remote control to flush the toilet. The homeowner smiled and said to Xian, "Children, uncle here is not a smart toilet, there is no remote control." The little girl blinked her innocent big eyes and looked at the homeowner, saying, "Okay." Anzhi touched his delicate little head. This sensible little girl always makes people feel cute and obedient when she says, "Okay." Speaking of which, her mother is also very intellectual and steady, no wonder she can cultivate such a sensible little girl. Anzhi tried to flush the toilet, and the water in the toilet spun down. The little girl saw it and couldn't help but shout, "Oh my, it's flushing." The little girl over 2 years old is indeed curious about everything and full of interest. Afterwards, Anzhi checked the water and electricity on the second floor, looked at every place, and confirmed that there were no problems, then returned to the first floor to take a look. The first floor is spacious and there are not many places that need to be carefully examined. The main thing about Luan is to check if there are any problems with water and electricity. The homeowner of this store has a good aesthetic, and the basic decoration of the store is also well preserved. If possible, he wants to try not to move much and only do soft furnishings. Therefore, if it is possible not to modify water and electricity, try not to do so. Accompanied by Zhang Suxin, Xian bounced back and forth in the open room, quickly aiming at the piano that had not yet been moved away. She ran to Luan's side, as if she knew the piano, and pointed in the direction of the piano, saying, "Dad, piano." "Well, the piano." Anzhi rubbed the delicate hair that had just been a little messy by his touch upstairs. After all, Zhang Suxin is a once famous young queen in the music industry. It is normal for her family to have a piano, and it is normal for a delicate girl to know about the piano. He. Slim and Proud smiled. Anzhi asked, "Can Xian play the piano?" As a result, Xian pulled Anzhi towards the piano and said, "Dad plays." "Okay, Dad plays." Anzhi didn't want to disappoint the little cotton jacket, so he turned to the homeowner and said, "Sorry, can you wait for me for a moment?" "Soon." "Can you lend me this piano to play?" The landlord was very reasonable and said, "It's okay. Sir, you can even play the piano, so I'll be all ears." Anzhi smiled and said, "I only know how to play it casually." He arrived at the piano and moved out the stool to sit down. As soon as she sat down, Xian started to crawl up the piano bench with a snort. Upon seeing this, Luan picked up the little girl and placed her next to him. The piano bench is long enough for 2 people to sit side by side without any problem. Moreover, the fibers are still so small. Zhang Suxin also stood curiously next to the piano. Anzhi gave her another surprise that she could even play the piano. Of course, it was just an accident, not a pleasant surprise. The biggest surprise that Anzhi gave her now was that she turned out to be the author of the knife, Doraemon. She was still a bit conflicted and unhappy yesterday. If she had never met Anzhi before and found out that the person in front of her was Doraemon, Zhang Suxin would not hesitate to give her more advice, asking if she could resurrect Xiaomi or something like that. But unfortunately, she had an inexplicable relationship with Anzhi, and she didn't speak much. "I don't know what this guy can play," Zhang Suxin thought to herself. Anzhi lifted the lid of the piano and placed his fingers on the keys, playing. Dang dang dang, dang 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 dang, dang dang dang, dang dang dang. Simple, fast-paced, and joyful music flowed through Anzhi's fingers. The landlord and Zhang Suxin were slightly surprised. This is obviously a children's music, and it is simple, comfortable, and very pleasant to listen to. Generally speaking, simple and pleasant children's music is always very popular. After all, there isn't a lot of specialized children's music in the world, but children keep getting more and more. But neither Zhang Suxin nor the homeowner had heard the children's music played by Anzhi. "Isn't it nice to hear?" Anzhi played while asking Xian. It sounds good. The little girl shook her little head and twisted her buttocks, still keeping up with the rhythm. Anzhi said, "How about Daddy sing to you again?" The little girl said coquettishly, "Okay." The song is not long, Anzhi has already repeated it. When he repeated it a third time, he sang along with the music. Two tigers, running fast, one without ears, never having a tail, really strange, really strange. Zhang Suxin blinked in surprise. I haven't heard the song before, and the song is also a nursery rhyme that I haven't heard before. Where did he get it from? And the homeowner over there is already diligently memorizing it. If he can play the piano, he will naturally play the piano as well. He also has children at home, so it should be nice to go back and use this nursery rhyme to suit them. The little girl, Xian, didn't have so many thoughts. She just listened interestingly and kept laughing, no ears, no tail, hee hee. At her age, she doesn't even question why tigers don't have ears or tails, she just thinks it sounds good and fun. After playing it once, the little girl shook Anzhi's arm and said, "Play it again, play it again." Zhang Suxin picked up Xian and advised, "Xian, be good. Dad has something else to do. When you get home, will Mom play for you?" So Xian nodded sensible again and said, "Okay." End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Uncontrollable Emotions. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Uncontrollable Emotions. A sensible little girl is really likable. After some consideration, Anzhi asked the homeowner, "Can you sell me this piano? It happens to be right here and there's no need to move it out." The homeowner was also a very cheerful person and agreed, "Then I'll sell the piano to you at cost price, just to get to know you." He quoted a price, not low but not too outrageous. Anzhi didn't know much about piano brands in this world, so he turned to look at Zhang Suxin. Zhang Suxin understood his meaning at a glance and nodded. Anzhi said, "Okay, thank you very much." The landlord smiled and said, "What are you polite about? Mr. Liu, can you tell me the name of the nursery rhyme you just played and where do you find it?" Anzhi said, "There shouldn't be anything else, I just casually played it." Playing casually. The homeowner couldn't help but be surprised, "You play so well, Mr. Liu. You are really amazing." Anzhi smiled and said, "It's all to please my daughter." Xian had just climbed down from the piano bench and accurately caught the word daughter in An's words. She raised her head to take a glance at An. Seeing that Anzhi was not speaking to her, he came over and grabbed Anzhi's big hand with his small hand, trying to attract his attention. An smiled and picked up Xian. Xian is satisfied with this. The landlord said, "Anyway, Mr. Liu, you are very skilled. Ordinary people can't play music of this level at will." Zhang Suxin didn't speak, but secretly nodded in her heart. Anzhi really surprised her greatly. She thought that Anzhi had found such a simple, beautiful nursery rhyme from somewhere, and felt that Anzhi also had a heart to play it for Xian. Unexpectedly, the song was written by Anzhi himself. No wonder the lyrics have no ears and no tail, they sound strange. I guess Anzhi didn't think too much when he casually sang. What kind of person is this man who had an unavoidable misunderstanding with himself 3 years ago? I can write books, play the piano, and write nursery rhymes. Zhang Suxin felt that her emotions were somewhat unusual. She had just thought before that as long as Anzhi was not the kind of rogue, ignorant, and inexperienced guy, it would be great. In that case, she could also rest assured that Anzhi would have contact with Xian. After meeting yesterday, Anzhi's words and actions did not make her feel uncomfortable, and she breathed a sigh of relief. But she never expected that Anzhi would be the author of Dragon Clan, Doraemon. And now, she has discovered that Anzhi can even create nursery rhymes and play the piano. Wave after wave of surprises couldn't help but cause her emotions to fluctuate. Lu Anzhi is destined to be the father of Xian Xian. Although she didn't initially have high expectations for Xian Xian's father, who wouldn't want her father to be better. And it's not just that. The identity of Luan Doraemon and her talent in creating children's songs and piano music also gave her more emotional impact. She has only read 2 books written by Doraemon about the Dragon Clan. The first one was just for entertainment, but the second one was attracted by Xiaomi. I just didn't expect Doraemon to cut Xiaomi so decisively. However, after all, it was the story in the book, and when reading, Zhang Suxin did not have too much entanglement. After reading the closed book, I only felt a little sad. But yesterday Doraemon sat in front of her, and her emotions couldn't hold up for a moment. I almost had insomnia last night. Of course, it is not impossible for Lu Anzhi to boast to her that he is Doraemon. But Zhang Suxin did not doubt it. Yesterday, Guan Lu Anzhi's words and actions didn't seem to be brainless and talkative. Due to his delicate nature, Lu Anzhi's contact with him will not be overnight. He impersonates his identity as a writer, and in the short term, he is okay. How can he not reveal his true identity over time? And I didn't disclose in advance that I had read the novel written by Doraemon. In short, Doraemon's presence in front of her delicate father made yesterday's Zhang Suxin a bit defensive. Even today, Zhang Suxin's emotions are inevitably affected. In this situation, Lu Anzhi suddenly played and sang a song called 2 Tigers, which further caused Zhang Suxin's emotions to fluctuate. However, she restrained her emotions and did not show it. These are not the most important. The most important thing is that Luan must be able to treat fibers well. Mr. Lu, can I take your song back and play it for my child? Don't worry, I won't take it out casually. The shopkeeper asked. He believes that a piece of music that has not been released should be highly valued by the creators. Even if this music is just a simple children's music. Lu Anzhi said, no problem. Let's get down to business first. I have already taken good care of the house and there is no problem. Next, I will go through the procedures and pay the agreed price, plus the cost of this piano. What do you think? The shopkeeper nodded and said, okay. The next few people left the piano company, transferred ownership, signed contracts, and after a series of procedures, Lu Anzhi paid and completely settled the matter of buying the shop. They had already prepared the relevant procedures and everything went very smoothly. However, Zhang Suxin did not follow around because she was carrying a slender belt. She came over to the piano company, but only followed for a short while before Lu Anzhi left his busy schedule. It made Lu Anzhi feel a bit guilty. However, Zhang Suxin said it's okay. She was already very satisfied to hear Lu Anzhi's song, 2 Tigers, for Xiao Xiandan. In her opinion, having this song is enough to show that Lu Anzhi has a heart. But when Zhang Suxin said so, Lu Anzhi felt even more ashamed. In the Jiuanqin company, Lu Anzhi was only a temporary inspiration and played 2 Tigers. He only thought about writing some fairy tales for his daughter when he went back last night, but he didn't think about preparing any intentions for Xian Xian. Next time we meet, it's time to think about what gift to give to Xian Xian. After completing the transfer of ownership and contract, and obtaining the property rights certificate of the shop, Lu Anzhi took the key from Jiuanqin store, parted ways with the store owner, and returned to the Qin store. At this point, it was already late. After all, there are many processes, even if the progress is smooth, it took a whole day. He conducted another tour of the entire piano industry, preparing to have some dinner, and then returned to the hotel to write a novel. The phone's ringtone suddenly rings. It's Zhang Suxin calling. Lu Anzhi has already saved Zhang Suxin's phone number. He answered the phone and heard a delicate sound coming from the receiver. Dad, Dad, he couldn't help but shout. It seems that the little one knows that Zhang Suxin is calling him. Fine and well behaved, Mom and Dad have something to say. If Dad is okay tomorrow, let him come and play with you, okay? Zhang Suxin first advised Xian on the phone. A slender and obedient voice came through the earpiece of the phone again. Okay. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Editor's reminder: you are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Editor's reminder: are you doing anything tomorrow? Zhang Suxin said to Lu Anzhi over the phone. As she calmed down, Lu Anzhi said, there's nothing to worry about. The next step is to look at the decoration, buying furniture, and obtaining a bookstore operating license. We need to follow the procedure step by step, and there's no rush for the next 1 or 2 days. Zhang Suxin let out a soft and then said, would you like to come over to my house tomorrow to accompany Xian? Lu Anzhi was slightly taken aback. He never thought that Zhang Suxin would invite him to her house so early. But no matter what, it's always good to be able to accompany Xian. Well, good. He agreed. Zhang Suxin said, is that the name of the song, Two Tigers? Lu Anzhi Dao. Yes. The entire song only has a few lines of lyrics, and it's easy for Zhang Suxin to determine the title of the song. Zhang Suxin said, have you registered the song copyright online? Lu Anzhi was somewhat surprised and said, can we still register copyright through the internet? He only thought that the development of this world was similar to the early 21st century in his previous life. The novel aspect looks like this, while the music aspect, although there are already several music websites online, is lacking in popularity. The main focus is on downloading songs, but the speed is very slow. Although the internet era has already sparked the first wave, the main way singers release songs is still through albums. Zhang Suxin said, well, it's possible. The official website just opened an online music copyright registration platform last year, which allows you to register copyrights directly online. However, the internet speed is very slow and it keeps getting disconnected. If you need it, bring your ID card and I'll help you register. Lu Anzhi was a bit surprised, but he didn't expect this world to be at the forefront in this area. He nodded and said, okay. Thank you very much. Zhang Suxin said, you're welcome. There's nothing more to say afterwards. Before hanging up the phone, Zhang Suxin asked Xian to come over and say goodbye to her father. Xianxian exclaimed, goodbye daddy, on the other end of the phone, and then paused for a moment. Lu Anzhi couldn't help but smile. Hanging up the phone, Lu Anzhi received a text message from Zhang Suxin, which contained the address of a residential area. He changed his original plan. After finding a place to have dinner, I went to the mall to choose a gift for Xian. Even if you are late, it's always better than not having a meeting gift. There is a Wantong shopping mall near Jiuan Road, which is a comprehensive commercial area similar to Wanda in the past. This mall is also very popular at night. When Lu Anzhi went alone, he saw a small basketball game held outside the mall, and passionate young people stayed up late fighting. The onlookers cheered from time to time. If it had been before, Lu Anzhi might have had some leisure time to take a look. But at this moment, he was all focused on buying a gift for Xian, only glanced quickly and then walked around. Found a children's toy store in the mall, Lu Anzhi walked in, but suddenly made a mistake. The store was filled with a wide variety of toys, including cars, dolls, music boxes, and so on, all in one place. He was dazzled by the sight and didn't know how to choose. After watching for a while, he decided not to choose and took one toy car, one rabbit doll, and one music box each. Anyway, there's not a shortage of money, why only choose one? Unfortunately, I haven't seen any toys like Barbie dolls here. He thinks the little girl should like them. I don't know if it's not in this world. He became addicted to buying, and after coming out of the toy store, he found a good children's clothing store. Recalling his slender size, he bought several pieces of various clothes in various colors, including small shirts, skirts, and jackets. I also want to buy snacks afterwards. However, I didn't know what 2-year-old children dared to eat, nor was I sure about Zhang Suxin's requirements and management of a slim diet, so I had to give up. Carrying big and small bags back to the hotel, Anzhi tidied up his mood and continued to write. The little prince wrote another paragraph. In the middle, I received a message from the editor under the maple tree through the chat software Qiuqiu, asking, "Where is the manuscript?" Luan casually replied, "I'm writing now." Ku is the editor's online name, and Anzhi still doesn't know the editor's real name. After 3 years of online interaction, Anzhi and Ku are quite familiar, but both of them are curious about each other's origins. Anzhi doesn't know a girl's family, and when it comes to chatting, she is also very cheerful and lively. Why is it called bitterness? And I couldn't figure out the meaning behind Luan's pen name Doraemon, and why he called his nickname Qiuqiu, "You're not a penguin." The portrait of hardship flickered again, and Anzhi cut the screen to take a look. The editor was complaining again. "You clearly told me that it was only these 2 days before the completion of the manuscript." Anzhi's reply. "Yes, so you can wait a little longer." Bitter. Tea. Anzhi continued to code without caring about her. She sent another message. "I've been waiting so hard. I'm so tired. It's so uncomfortable." Anzhi replied again. "Keep going, work hard and persist, you can do it." Ku. You are a real dog. This is a joke that Anzhi used to joke with Ku before, and now Ku has learned and used it vividly. Anzhi cut the screen and looked at it, thinking that it was not appropriate to procrastinate. Especially if you have already made a promise, not fulfilling it seems like you lack credibility. So he replied, okay, my dog will submit the manuscript no later than the day after tomorrow. Step back now. I was only satisfied with my hard work and gave a smiling expression, followed by the word, here. Anzhi had to stop The Little Prince for now and leave it for later writing. Anyway, I probably can't understand it now, so it's okay to slow down the progress of this book. A night of shopping has satisfied his urgent desire to do something for his child. He is not in a hurry and insists on writing fairy tales first. He opened the old document and continued to make a move on Anzhi. The next day, when setting off for Zhang Suxin's house, Anzhi not only brought the clothes and toys he had bought for her, but also carried a backpack with a laptop on his back. If possible, he wants to spend the day with Xian. Xian may have some rest time, so he can take the time to code and submit the manuscript earlier. He also had his ID card in his backpack. I went to Zhang Suxin's house to see what a music copyright registration website looks like that I never had in my past life. After getting into the taxi, Anzhi reported the address on his mobile phone text message to the driver, and after about 10 minutes of driving, he arrived at the destination. The distance is not too far. However, what surprised Luan was that the Zhuyuan community where Zhang Suxin lived was not a high-end residential area, but just an ordinary community. Of course, this community also looks pretty good. Although it's not too luxurious or high-end, it can still be considered a mid-range area. Therefore, there are security guards at the entrance of the community, and outsiders who want to enter must first communicate with the residents. Anzhi called Zhang Suxin before being allowed into the community. He knocked on the door of Zhang Suxin's house and heard the sound of footsteps inside, which was not made by adults. As soon as the door opened, he saw his delicate little head exposed inside and sweetly called out to him, "Dad." End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Lament towards the Dragon Clan. One day later you are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Lament towards the Dragon Clan. One day later, as soon as the little girl called her dad, she opened her little hands and wanted to hug her. Anzhi raised his hands full of bags and said with a smile, "Dad is holding a gift for you." "I can't spare my hands to hold Xian." Xian let out a cry, "Oh," and her attention was immediately drawn to the bag in Lu Anji's hand. Zhang Suxin stood behind Lu Anji and waited for him to come in. She placed a brand new pair of slippers in front of Lu Anji and said, "You can put them on. I have prepared them for you." Lu Anji put all the bags on the ground and went to put on slippers. Xiaoxian wrapped around several bags, looking eager to see through, but did not open them without authorization. It seems that Zhang Suxin has educated the little girl very well. Before she is convinced that it is her own thing, the little girl will not casually search for it. Lu Anji changed his shoes, took out the toys from the bag one by one and placed them on the table. He smiled and said, "Look what it is." Her slender eyes lit up and she recited, "Ah. Car. Rabbit. Box table. Clothes. 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 Skirts." The little girl's vocabulary is not enough to distinguish things like T-shirts and shirts in language and pronounce them as clothes. Zhang Suxin said, "Just come and buy so many things." Lu Anji smiled and said, "Shouldn't I buy it for my daughter?" Zhang Suxin couldn't help but laugh and said, "I should." She turned to ask Xian, "Do you like it?" Xian happily said, "Joy." Joy, word by word, it was strange to exert force. She picked up toys and clothes for a while, looking left and right. It seemed that she really liked them. She was busy looking at these things alone, and Lu Anji didn't need to worry about her for the time being. As he took off his backpack, he said to Zhang Suxin, "I thought you, a big celebrity, would live in some luxurious and upscale community. I didn't expect you to live here." Zhang Suxin said, "What kind of big star is that? I've been retiring for 3 years. Before, I used to live in a house on the side of EP1-10, but it was a company-provided house. Naturally, when I quit, I had to return the house. Later on, when I bought a house myself, I couldn't be stubborn anymore. It took me a long time to buy this second-hand house here. The price here is reasonable, and I can just accept it. After all, I have retired and I don't know what I will do in the future. I have to keep the money to take care of my daughter. Secondly, this house is not a new one and does not require renovation. The decoration layout itself is also good, which suits my heart. I have saved a lot of trouble and can also take care of my child's health. After becoming pregnant with Xiaoxian, I often search online for things related to my child, and I feel that the new house is so scary for children to live in." As she spoke, she took the backpack from Lu Anji's hand, intending to help put it aside, but couldn't help but feel heavy when she picked it up. "So heavy, what are you carrying on your back?" She couldn't help but ask. Lu Anji said, "It's a computer. The editor was a bit rushed to expedite the manuscript, so I brought my notebook with me. I'll take some time to write." Zhang Suxin's eyes lit up and she said, "Is it the third part of The Dragon Clan?" Lu Anji nodded and said, "Yes, it's called Black Moon Tide. Zhang Suxin said, "There won't be a dragon king like Constantine or Xiemi written in this movie, will there? What she can't stand the most is this. Even though she is a villainous boss, why write such a sympathetic or beloved character and plot?" Finally, the knife was fired again, which made people's thoughts unclear. Zhang Suxin suspected that Lu Anji was intentional. "I heard that the first 2 books written by Doraemon were also tragic. Perhaps he likes to use such a trick to make people cry. If that's the case, she will definitely not read the third part of Dragon Clan. Anyway, she's just reading for leisure, why bother finding pleasure for herself?" Luan Ji Dao. No. The villain in the third part is a complete villain. Even if he hides his identity in the early stage, he will not use any writing techniques to earn sympathy. If you keep using the same routine, it won't look good anymore. What's going on again and again? Zhang Suxin hesitated and said, "Really?" Luan Ji Dao said, "Really, I can tell you now that the villain in the third part is called Herzog, and the incarnation in the early stage is called Orange Shenzong. You can take a look then, and if you find anything wrong, just abandon the book. Zhang Suxin's interest was immediately aroused, and she wanted to have a quick look at the third draft with Lu Anzhi. But on second thought, she and Lu Anzhi were only related to her mother and father, and there was no other connection. Asking for a manuscript from Lu Anzhi is like asking for a new song that has not yet been released, which is a bit abrupt and inappropriate. She could only endure it and asked, "How much have you written?" Lu Anzhi Dao. "If there are no problems, I can finish writing today or tomorrow." Zhang Suxin said, "Then it will be released soon, right?" Lu Anzhi nodded and said, "I'll submit the manuscript tomorrow, and they should be able to review it quickly under maple tree. My manuscript was reviewed very quickly by them, and this book is already the third part, so there's no need to consider the issue number. It shouldn't take much time for promotion, printing, and publication." Zhang Suxin nodded and said, "Okay, then I'll wait to read it." "Mom, I'm going to wear a new one." The slender voice interrupted the conversation between the two. The two of them lowered their heads and looked at Xian, only to see her holding up the pink dress. Zhang Suxin said, "It's clothes." Xian Dao said, "Clothes." Zhang Suxin said, yes, new clothes. Fiber optic duct. New household." Lu Anzhi burst out laughing. "I didn't expect that speaking an extra word in the mouth of a little over 2-year-old girl would produce such a change." Upon hearing Lu Anzhi's smile, Xian laughed foolishly at him, without knowing what he was laughing at. "Anyway, she is just very happy." Zhang Suxin also smiled helplessly and said, "It's quite difficult to teach her how to speak. She always likes to say 5, 6, 7, 8 as 5, 6, 8. No matter how she teaches her, she won't change it." Lu Anzhi smiled and said, "She's just a little over 2 years old. How high do you want her to be?" Zhang Suxin said, "The problem is that sometimes she can also say it right. I suspect she's deliberately going against me, thinking it's fun." As if reminded by Zhang Suxin, she counted with a delicate and graceful expression, nodding her head as she counted, looking very serious. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 7. Lu Anzhi asked, "What about 9? 8, 7, 9, 10. Lu Anzhi. 7, 8, 9, 10. Xian nodded seriously, then continued to count her little head and said, 5, 6, 8, 7, 9, 10. Zhang Suxin smiled and said, "Take a look." Lu Anzhi. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Dad, you are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. Dad, Zhang Suxin found it interesting and had a little bit of pleasure. Her father finally tasted the small crumbs she had eaten before. And it seems that Lu Anzhi is still a bit dissatisfied. Just now this guy said something, she's just a little over 2 years old. Now it's time for this guy to know what a little over 2-year-old child is. You accompany Xian first, and I'll pour you a glass of water. Zhang Suxin said and walked away. Lu Anzhi's stubbornness has indeed increased a bit. This little girl is already able to count from 1 to 10, so what else is there to count against? It's nothing but something that needs correction. He doesn't believe he can't correct this little girl. He sat down on the sofa, picked up Xian, and placed her on his own leg. The little girl was wearing open crotch pants at home. When Lu Anzhi picked her up, he couldn't help but pat her little buttocks, which were chubby and comfortable. "Come on, count with Dad." 1. Lu Anzhi raised his hand in front of Xian and extended a finger. 1, followed Xian obediently. Lu Anzhi extended 2 more fingers and said, 2. 2, she said, with her slender big eyes fixed on Lu Anzhi's fingers. Lu Anzhi extended 3 more fingers and said, 3. Fiber count. 3. When Lu Anji extended his fourth finger, Xian began to read to herself, 4. Then 5, 6, 7. Lu Anji used both hands. The way one hand gestures numbers, I'm afraid the little girl may not understand. The counting of small fibers went very smoothly, preventing 8 from slipping ahead of 7. 8, 9, 10. She followed Lu Anji's raised fingers one by one to count the remaining 3 numbers correctly. Lu Anji was satisfied and touched his delicate little brain, praising, great. Very delicate. Xian also boasted, then nodded her little head and counted again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 7. Lu Anji, dot. How about it, can't we handle it? Zhang Suxin brought out a glass of water and placed it in front of Luan, then asked with a smile. Lu Anji smiled helplessly and said, it seems you're right. This girl did it on purpose. Her delicate and innocent big eyes blinked as if she didn't understand what Lu Anji was saying. Zhang Suxin also set up a fruit plate and said, the water is a bit hot. You can eat some fruit first. Lu Anji said, thank you, and then smiled, you really can't tell where a big star looks right now. Zhang Suxin asked, what do you say? When Luan was one of them, he didn't know what to say. After some thought, he said, anyway. It's just quite homey. Zhang Suxin smiled slightly and said, I'm just at home. Why don't I stay at home? As she spoke, she pushed the fruit tray in the direction of Lu Anji and said, let's eat some fruit. They're all newly bought and quite fresh. The current mode of interaction between the two is completely that of a hostess and a guest, but with a small delicacy sandwiched between them, their relationship seems to be closer and more awkward. Slimming out of Lu Anji's arms, he stood in front of the fruit tray. Lu Anji thought she was going to eat fruit, but she didn't expect the little girl to pick up an apple from the fruit plate and approach Lu Anji, saying, hey, daddy, ah. The little girl's movements were quite urgent, as if afraid that Luan would take the lead and eat the fruit herself. Feeling overwhelmed, Lu Anji had no choice but to open his mouth and say, ah. Xian quickly stuffed the apple into Lu An's mouth and smiled happily, squinting her eyes. Lu Anji gently pinched his delicate face and asked Zhang Suxin while chewing, does she usually feed you like this? Zhang Suxin said, I used to feed you before, but I haven't received this treatment lately. It was only yesterday when she saw you and kept nagging about you that she regained this skill and said she wanted to feed you medicine. She used to feed me medicine when I was feeling unwell. Lu Anji smiled and said, then I have to thank you. It's fortunate that you didn't bring out some medicine. Otherwise, judging from her posture, even medicine would have to be given to me. Dad, said Xian, taking another piece of pear and feeding it to Lu Anji in a lively manner. Luan quickly swallowed the apple in his mouth so that Xian could stuff the pear into his mouth. Zhang Suxin said, just say you don't eat, she's very sensible. Just refuse her and you won't feed her. As she spoke, Xian went to get the third piece of fruit again. Lu Anji quickly accelerated his chewing speed. Zhang Suxin sighed and said, it's my fault. I should have contacted you earlier. She used to be okay when she wasn't sensible. Starting from the past 6 months, when playing with other children in the community, I have been unhappy to see other children with fathers but without fathers. I hesitated for a long time before contacting you. When I told her I would find you, she began to keep nagging. She kept telling me to feed my dad medicine, show my dad the puppy doll, show my dad the car, and show my dad the little drum. I knew you were coming today, but she got up early and lay on the window, looking out. She said, pointing at this person and asking if it's dad, pointing at that person and asking if it's dad. She just saw you coming and hurriedly ran to the door to open it. If she had found you earlier, she wouldn't have been thinking about it for half a year. Lu Anji was slightly taken aback. I didn't expect that there would be such a scene before I just came over and opened the door with my slender eyes. Dad, ah. Xian took another apple and stuffed it into his mouth. Lu Anzhi took an apple and fed it to Xian, saying, Xian also eats it. Xian happily took it and picked up the small piece of apple with both hands. Lu Anzhi said, actually, the time you told me was just right. When you called me, I had just returned from abroad and was staying at the Jiuan Hotel. Zhang Suxin was surprised and said, did you go abroad before? Lu Anzhi said, yes. 3 years ago, after I wrote the holy biography and published it, I resigned and went on a trip. I was in China for the first year and a half, and abroad for the second year and a half. I just returned the day before yesterday. Why? Suddenly feeling a little uncomfortable. Zhang Suxin suddenly felt a bit psychologically unbalanced. For the past 3 years, she retired from home, gave birth to children, and finally found her father. However, the father in front of her said that she had been traveling for the past 3 years. Who can balance this for? But she also knew that it was not her father's fault. The accident 3 years ago had a cause, and Lu Anzhi was unaware of her situation. And so far, her father's performance is also quite good. There is no evasion, no refusal of responsibility, and I am quite good at fiber. What else is she dissatisfied with? This small and inexplicable imbalance can only be submerged in Zhang Suxin's heart. Dad, ah. After finishing the apple, Xian went to feed Lu Anzhi. Zhang Suxin saw this harmonious and beautiful scene in her eyes, and suddenly felt her mood improve, with a smile unconsciously rising from the corners of her mouth. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. The Music Copyright Network, Too Slow to Die. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. The Music Copyright Network, Too Slow to Die. After being fed several times in a row, Lu Anzhi saw that Xian had a bit of an endless interest and quickly diverted her attention. Xian, should we try new clothes? Fine, said the slender eyes, shining brightly. She was just in a hurry to wear new clothes, but was caught off guard by the incident of feeding her father. At this moment, upon hearing Lu An's words, he turned around and picked up the pink dress, saying, I want to wear this. It seems that she likes skirts. Lu Anzhi wanted to try on the dress directly for the little girl, but he had never done this before. He was in a hurry and didn't put on the delicate dress for a long time. I'll do it. Zhang Suxin saw the situation and quickly replaced the slender figure with a new dress. Lu Anzhi couldn't help but praise, you are so skilled. Zhang Suxin smiled and remained silent. What can I do if I'm not proficient? I'm not like you, I can spend 3 years traveling. Just jokingly complaining that she was just thinking in her heart, to avoid Luan's worries, she wouldn't say it. Xian put on her skirt, showed off in front of Lu Anzhi and Zhang Suxin, and then ran to look in the mirror. Zhang Suxin doesn't have an isometric mirror at home, only a half-body mirror above the shoe cabinet. The little one couldn't see in the mirror, so he climbed up the coffee table with a snort before looking in the mirror. I quite like Stinky Beauty. Lu Anzhi couldn't help but laugh. Upon hearing Lu An's words, Xian seemed to think she was praising her. She smiled and said, Xian is beautiful. Lu Anzhi said, yes, it's beautiful and delicate. Xian was even more happy, looking in the mirror and not getting tired of it. Come on, try other clothes. Zhang Suxin said as she lifted Xian off the coffee table. I have tried on several other clothes one by one and they all fit perfectly. Lu Anzhi felt at ease, it seemed that the size of his clothes was quite suitable. Afterwards, Zhang Suxin changed Xian into old clothes and took the new clothes, saying that they needed to be washed before she could wear them. Lu Anzhi also doesn't understand these. Zhang Suxin has been taking care of delicate fibers for so long, so it must be reasonable to do so. He accompanied Xian to play around, and Zhang Suxin took the clothes to wash. Xian Xian arranged the toys that Lu Anzhi had bought for her on the coffee table one by one, counted them one by one, and then brought her own toys to show Lu Anzhi. This is a puppy doll. This is a pink car. Green cars. Yellow. Excavator. Little drum. The fibers shook a small tambourine with a thud. Zhang Suxin walked out. So fast. Lu An's question. Zhang Suxin said, I specifically bought a small washing machine to wash her clothes. Just put her clothes in the washing machine and open it. Lu Anzhi exclaimed in surprise, do you have a washing machine specifically designed for children? Zhang Suxin nodded and said, later on, I realized it wasn't necessary either. But I've already bought it and have been using it ever since. Lu Anzhi smiled and said, you're a big star, and you're not short of a little money. Zhang Suxin said, celebrities are also old-timers. I've been sitting around for over 2 years, and last year I started taking on some engagement songs to help people write songs. I dare not act recklessly. Lu Anzhi Dao. It's probably not cheap to ask you to write songs, is it? His mind was also filled with songs from his past life, from lyrics and music to arrangement, all of which were incredibly clear. But after all, he is not an expert like Zhang Suxin. Without any connections or fame, those songs can only lie in his memory. It's a pity. Zhang Suxin wrinkled her delicate Qiong nose and smiled slightly smugly, of course, I was also a very popular creative singer back then. The price is low, isn't it? Not that I'm sorry for my years in the industry. Lu Anzhi was slightly surprised. It's not because of Zhang Suxin's words, but because he hadn't seen Zhang Suxin show such a slightly playful expression before. Zhang Suxin said, speaking of this, where is your ID card? Have you brought it with you? I brought it. Lu Anzhi said and went to the backpack to retrieve his ID card. The ID card in this world is different from the previous life, but it is still a hard card style. When entering or exiting the subway, it can already be used for magnetic scanning. But it is obviously not possible to log into websites by scrolling through magnets at home. Zhang Suxin took out a camera and took a photo of Lu Anzhi's ID card. She also took out the memory card from the camera, opened her desktop computer, and connected it to the computer using a card reader. Lu Anzhi couldn't help but reminisce about the smartphones of his past life. I don't know when the intelligent machines in this world will develop. Unfortunately, I am not proficient in these techniques. Otherwise, I would have to figure out how to be the father of fruits. After importing Lu Anzhi's ID card photo into the computer, Zhang Suxin clicked on another software and edited the photo format and size. You really know a lot. The road to safety. Zhang Suxin said, there's nothing I can do. I took on a song appointment last year and needed to use this website. But this website was only launched in the past 2 years and I haven't used it yet when I retired. I can only register temporarily. This copyright website requires a fixed format for uploading ID cards, which is too large and not suitable. It's a lot of trouble. I can't go out and get my ID card, nor can I find my old employer, so I have to learn how to edit the pictures myself. While speaking, Zhang Suxin repaired the picture and saved the new one on the desktop. Then he opened another document and showed it to Lu Anzhi. I jotted down your song, 2 Tigers yesterday, and when I came back, I wrote it into a piano score and the lyrics were also written. Please take a look, right? Zhang Suxin said. Lu Anzhi didn't expect Zhang Suxin to be so thoughtful. She leaned over and looked closely, saying, no problem, thank you very much. He bent down and couldn't help but feel closer to Zhang Suxin, as if sensing her body temperature. A fragrance of shampoo seeped into the nose, and Lu Anzhi found it quite pleasant to smell. Zhang Suxin said softly, her voice a bit muffled, as if she was a bit embarrassed. At this moment, Luan noticed and quickly straightened up. Afterwards, Zhang Suxin opened a website. The website's page is very clean and simple, with the words, Music Copyright Network, written on the header. Zhang Suxin opened the registration page, stood up and stepped aside, allowing Anzhi to sit down and fill in the account password, and then received a verification code on her phone. Then comes the lengthy identity verification and the time to upload the ID card. This website indeed has a slow internet speed and often fails to upload. Zhang Suxin uploaded it more than 10 times before completing it. Do you want to use Doraemon vest or your real name Anzhi? Zhang Suxin asked. Anzhi said, just Anzhi. When writing novels, pen names were a habit. In his past life, he occasionally used a casual pen name when writing online articles, which is why he chose a pen name at that time. There's no need to do this now. Zhang Suxin nodded and filled in the name Anzhi in the external name column. And the next step is to upload the score and lyrics of Two Tigers. These two things are more difficult to pass on, constantly failing over and over again, and even one time the progress reached 99%, causing the page to crash. Anzhi watched from the side, almost wanting to smash the computer, but Zhang Suxin was able to calm down and sit there. Such patience really impressed Anzhi. After uploading, during the waiting period for review, Anzhi and Zhang Suxin both accompanied Xianxian to play with her toys. Not long after, Zhang Suxin suddenly received a phone call. After hanging up the phone, I frowned and became worried. What's wrong? An's question. Zhang Suxin sighed and said, I had a date for a long time, but I haven't had any inspiration. End of this chapter.